What's going on, y'all? Forward Fabian, man, back again with a video. We're doing a reaction to Thomas Sowell. This is why the left only focuses on race, man. Be sure to like, comment, subscribe, hit the notification bell, follow me on all my socials, man. Forward Fabian. Let's go.
Welcome back, America. We're here with Dr. Thomas Sowell. The book is Social Justice Fallacies. I want to encourage you to go to Amazon.com and grab a copy. Any major bookstore should have a copy. And it is very readable, and it is worth reading, particularly now during these times. Dr. Sowell, when we talk about equality, immediately race pops into mind. It's always about race, racial discrimination, about the founding of the nation.
Nowadays, it's
white
about
dominant
sex.
society, so forth and so on. And you make the case, and you've made this case throughout your life, but it's very poignant in your book, which is, wait a minute. Of course, this has some impact, but it's not the only thing that has an impact. But why? First of all, what other things have an impact? It's probably an infinite list of things. And secondly, why do they only focus on race on the left?
I guess it's because that's proven to be a politically popular thing to do. But in point of fact, one of the things that's mentioned in the book is a study that was done by the New York Times, of all people, some years ago, where they tried to show the 10 poorest counties in the United States. And they mentioned which ones they were and so on. It turns out that 6 of those 10 counties had a population that was from 90% to 100% white. Now, in the New York Times, they didn't mention the race of the people, but once they told me the counties, I looked it up. And in fact, I followed the average income in those 6 counties over a span of 50 years. And in all those 50 years, all 6 of those counties had a median income lower than the median income of black Americans. Now, and so the people in those counties faced zero racism because they were white and indistinguishable from all other whites. They didn't have a legacy of slavery, and yet there they were. You have to ask then, clearly there must be other things that cause poverty. We can't just assume that because people of a given race have more poverty than some other people, that race must be the reason. But this has become the automatic kind of thing, and I think most people would be quite surprised. One of the things that
Let's keep it a bean. A majority of the America is ignorant. Like, you would, because for one, honestly speaking, like the top tier in terms of knowledge and expertise and know-how and unignorance isn't going to be a vast majority. It's always going to be a minority. Because if it was easy to be smart, or everybody could be smart, everybody would be at the cream of the crop. I'm not talking about book smart. I'm talking about common sense smart. A lot of folks ain't going to think like that in terms of understanding or realizing that. Because come on, man, a majority of the pure ignorance comes from the fact that if you're black or if you're a minority, you're stupid. Or there's a reason why these, the minorities are poverty stricken, man, because they're minorities. But obviously what Sowell is equating to the fact that it got nothing to do with no racial lineage or tied to no cultural background. But people don't look at the numbers. They just look at the general population. They look at what the masses want to portray. And it's really like the stigma, so to speak, man. But people don't have these type of intellectual conversations. You're only going to see this on Fox News with Thomas Sowell on his interview based off a book he wrote. But the general American is dumb. You know what I'm saying? And they're going to say dumb stuff. And the general American is the one who's pushing the normal narrative amongst society. It's only to where people will turn to media as that's like their God in terms of, oh, we're getting some news, so what the news says is right. They listen to what the news got to say. If the news paid a whole narrative of all the facts being delivered within this video, of course it would make people think. But guess what? It would have to be systematic. It'd have to be brainwashed, indoctrinated over time and time again to where people can think outside the box a little bit instead of being stupid.
happens is that behavior matters. And you see that in so many different ways. For example, I think most people would be surprised to learn that despite the fact that blacks as a whole have a higher poverty rate than whites as a whole, black married couple families have for more than a quarter of a century, every single year, had a poverty rate under 10%. And in most of those years, the national poverty rate was not as low as 10%. So it's not a quite, and you say, well, this is due to institutional racism. In that case, does that mean that the racists make an exception for blacks who are married? I mean, do racists either know or care whether blacks are married?
No.
None of these glib explanations stands up to the slightest empirical study.
And let's talk about this when it comes to minorities generally. You have an Asian population in this country that achieves a lot as a group, intellectually, education-wise, and they are discriminated against by these Ivy League colleges, by Harvard. We just had a Supreme Court decision and so forth, the way Jews were 100 years earlier, by Harvard, Yale, Princeton, and so forth. So the people who push this race issue, is it that they really care about black people or Asian people or Jewish people, or is it that it's just another wedge issue to try and destroy this culture and destroy this society?
Facts.
There are some people who are both. Some really believe it, and I feel sorry for them.
A majority,
but there are
bro.
some who really don't care. If it gets them elected, that's what matters. And this is one of the tragedies of trying to politicize race. There are so many fallacies that it's hard to even know which one to take up. But for example, the great narrative is that blacks rose from poverty, got into professional occupations as a result of the 1960s social welfare programs. And that this has been a big benefit. One of the problems with this way of looking at things is that everything depends on when you pick as the start of this trend. If you go back to 1940, that is 20 years before these wonderful things are supposed to have happened in the 1960s, and you discover that the degree to which blacks were in poverty declined from 87% in 1940 to 47% in 1960.
Dang.
So it went down by 40 points in those 20 years. Now you look at the 20 years following 1960, they went down 18 points. And so the trend did not begin in the 1960s. The trend was there before then, and the trend did not even accelerate after 1960. Many people think that it would all began with the Civil Rights Act of 1964. Well, that was a fine act to get rid of the segregation laws in the South. But the cold fact is that the percentage of blacks who had professional occupations doubled from 1954 to 1964. That is in the decade ending at the time that the Civil Rights Act of 1964 was passed. If you look at the things that are negative, like, for example, black children being raised in single-parent households. In 1940, just under 17% of black kids were raised in one-parent families. But after 1960s, before the end of the century, 4 times that many, 68% of black kids.
A lot of folks would contribute that to the crack epidemic, right? To where drugs really hit inner cities, to where that was the leading cause, to where a lot of, inner city families were losing on their parents. And it may have been predominantly, males or, the father in the household. I don't know. But I think there's a point in time to where a lot of statistics that aren't really detailed are, equal as to maybe not the equivalent, but there were still statistics behind mothers or women leaving the family due to, drug issues. But it's a very fine time because it's about 20 years prior, because like 80s was the crack epidemic, right there to like late 70s, if not early 80s or whatever. Correct me if I'm wrong, but the hippie area was in the 70s. So a lot of that stuff was already alluding to what was to come, right? Because a lot of people like to say, marijuana is the gateway drug. And, who knows what they was doing at Woodstock and during that whole era. I don't know if it was heavy stuff like crack, cocaine, and all that, but they were still on all their psychedelics. You know what I'm saying? So, yeah, 70s to 80s is when that really starts surfacing. So it makes sense, when drugs come into play. You gonna have, you're gonna have deadbeats, a whole lot of deadbeats.
were being raised in one-parent families. And that does not depend on racism or any of the other things they talk about. It depends upon things that happened due to the policies of the 1960s, which are still going forward.
Which encourage the dissolution of the family. It's just unbelievable. Dr. Sowell, when we return, my big question for you is, as a nation, where do we go from here?
I don't know how this video really depicted how the left why they only focus on race topics, but I mean, excuse me, through what I've seen, through a lot of the content and topics from Dr. Soul, man, dude just on a whole different level, you know what I'm saying? And studying a lot of topics for, close to over a whole century, you know what I'm saying? If you really want to look at it, dude been looking at stuff for a while now. Well, 1940s, yeah, close to, if not, you know what I'm saying? So, I don't know. Comment down below, man. I've done a few reactions to Thomas Sowell today. This will be my third today and counting. A lot of folks in the past have told me to tune into a lot of his videos. The first one I originally did was talking about like the whole slave history and slaves coming over from Africa and kind of that experience, the journey on that experience, the experience on that journey. So comment down below, man. Let me know y'all's thoughts, man. All this is just an introduction, but very insightful conversation and topics that, people don't really care to discuss. So, with that being said, comment down below. Peace, love, prosperity. We'll catch you on the next video, man. We out. God bless.